you need to be ready. It's not about if a breach can happen. It's all about when a breach can happen.
Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to be here. The first digital podcast of IC Digital, titled Digital Dunes, Cybersecurity Insights from a Middle East CIO. And this is powered by Mimecast and myself, DJ, partner and CTO at ICD InfoSec. And we do have a special guest today, one of the distinguished group CIOs at Buzeki Enterprises and president of the CIO Associations UAE. The intention of today's podcast is mainly focusing on the Cybersecurity Awareness Month and to bring some insights on key cybersecurity issues in the Middle East, engaging listeners on themes that address the region's unique challenges and opportunities. I would like to welcome Mr. Jay Kumar Mohan Chandran, a dynamic cloud evangelist and technologist with a wealth of global experience. Jay specializes in driving business success through cloud and digital transformations, cybersecurity, and IT governance. With a proven track record across EMEA and APAC, he currently serves as a group CIO at Buzeki Enterprises. And as I said, he's also the president of the CIO Association UAE, one of the world's largest CIO networks. Recognized as 3-time GCC CIO of the Year, Jay's passion lies where technology and business intersect, making him a leading voice in the tech industry. Jay is well known for his tech leadership in this space, so it is a privilege to welcome Jay, and we would like to start our conversation today. We are looking to break it down in with a couple of themes, given the challenges currently we are facing in the Middle East and also globally in the cybersecurity space. So welcome, Jay, and we are incredibly honored to have you on our first podcast and would love to hear a lot about your experience and your skills and knowledge in this space.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to be here today.
So one of the things that, yes, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but one of the the big challenges in the Middle East. What do you think is the current state of cybersecurity in the Middle East? What are your thoughts in specifically for this region?
Great. That's a great question. First of all, a warm welcome to everyone who is tuning in to this podcast, from wherever part of the world. The Middle East is actually always a different ball game, when it comes to leadership, be it tech leadership or any other leadership, because the way which organizations work here is completely different compared to many other parts of the world. And, yes, I have been fortunate enough to see a couple of transformations within the region, been here for the past 10 years. And cybersecurity within the Middle East is now at a pivotal juncture. Why? Because the organizations have been going through a lot of transformations in the past. And this increased need of digital transformation that's happening across industries, be it finance, BFSI, or energy sectors and utility sectors, is actually driving a lot of pressure towards the cyber aspects as well. And, nowadays, the tech leaders are, bound to ensure that we have the right kind of strategies in place. Otherwise, the region is more prominent. When a region or a country is growing, that's where the prominence of these kind of threat actors and threat vectors are also something which is very, very common. So, and the thing is, it is not just affecting the data. These threat actors, which is actually targeting mainly towards this country or the region, is not just targeting the data. It's also targeting the very, very fabric of the society, which is like, the financial systems, the healthcare even. So those kind of things will be very, very complicated. So that's where the importance of making sure that the tech leaders understand the dynamics, what's happening within the country and within the region, and work very collaboratively with organizations and bodies, and UAE has been in the forefront for that. Our Cybersecurity Council has established a lot of standards and protocols and practices. So work very closely with them and make sure that we drive those strategies across the organizations where we work with.
Interesting. And I think that kind of summarizes, all the current situation, current state. So, having touched upon at a very high level, very well summarized on what the current status of cybersecurity is in the Middle East, I would like to kind of pick your brain on the role of tech leadership, especially the senior management, executive management, tech leadership. How is that role evolving? How do you see that the role evolving currently and in the future as well?
Fundamentally, the entire tech leadership roles have evolved a lot, especially with the proliferation of all the technologies that has come in. You see all different type of titles available nowadays, from a traditional CIO title onwards till CDO, CISO, CMO, or CPO, CDO. Multiple titles are available. But end of the day, it's more of elevating the game and making sure that cybersecurity is at the forefront of everything what we do. And this has been something which is elevated as a strategic imperative in many of the organizations. And when I say elevated as a strategic imperative, you need to integrate that into the core of everything what you do within your organization. So it can be a digital transformation initiative. It can be a program that cuts across different business units within the organization. But irrespective of what it is, make sure that you take care of this piece of resilience and cybersecurity within that whole journey. Because if you are not considering this as a part of the larger program, then obviously there are chances that there will be loose ends which you will not know unless and until a situation comes. And this has changed to another extent where a CIO or a CISO is nowadays thinking, and even the thought process have changed to a level where it's not at all anymore if a breach can happen. It's all about when a breach can happen. So this means you need to be ready. You need to be ready in all sense in terms of making sure your environment is protected. You are moving from a reactive approach to a proactive approach. And this is what the evolving role of any tech leader within the space. So it's more from moving away from those traditional mindset and building that proactive mindset, making sure that you're addressing this well in advance.
Thank you so much. That's been really insightful.
Thank you. Thank you. As I said, I would like to add one more point here. As we always say, the world is flat, so it can happen from anywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, we have to be here in the Middle East. It can happen from anywhere. So it's all about being proactive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the mantra behind behind having a healthy cyber regime or having cyber resilience in an organization is being more proactive than reactive. Though we need to be reactive, that doesn't mean that we should not have proactive capabilities built in the organization. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for that. All right. I have a fantastic, interesting question. How or what it is the impact of the geopolitical dynamics or the influence of geopolitical factors affecting cybersecurity strategies in the Middle East?
That's a very interesting question. So DJ, what I believe is nothing can be fought individually. When we talk about a war, it's a collective effort. Similarly, I believe, we talk about politics, we talk about geopolitical impact and all that stuff. Every country is having, its own capabilities and its own weaknesses. So when it comes to situations like this, none of the country is in isolation. And I believe the same applies for Middle East. Because we have a lot of strength, we have a lot of capabilities compared to many other part of the world.
Yep.
But at the same time, all these kind of situations arise because it's not because something is happening within that country. it's always an extension of a cross-border impact, that can flow in, from some other region, some other country. Based on that, something can pop in immediately. So that's the situation, and that's the dynamics. But the brilliant thing what we can talk about here is, as I mentioned, if it is a war, and the war needs to be fought collectively, and it has to be done in the most subdue manner, you know and when I say subdue manner, it's all about increasing your awareness, making sure that you have the enough and more capabilities within your ecosystem, and understanding what the threat actors would be aiming for, and again being proactive and making sure that you are able to address those things before they reach our shores. So this is not something which is unavoidable, but at the same time, you can be more proactive. You can make sure that you have enough and more capabilities which is built, and you can watch, you can take a look at what is happening within the nearest nations and the countries, and make sure that you build the ecosystem accordingly. And one another very interesting topic related to this is, and this has been happening here in the Middle East, and it's very, very interesting to see that the threat intelligence sharing. This is something which earlier days countries never used to do. As GCC, within the Middle East, if you look at the collaboration that we have with the Gulf State of Councils,
Yep.
We actually are witnessing a huge amount of data sharing that is happening, particularly when it comes to these threat vectors and threat actors. So, which means, you can actually build the intelligence. You can also make sure that you share that collectively so that you fight collectively against these threat actors. So this is something which is phenomenal, and I believe that the region is much more capable and building more and more capabilities within this ecosystem. So there is a lot to come, with the new generation technologies that has come in, like AI, for example. It has taken over almost every industry, which means AI-driven threats or threat vectors are also evolving.
Yep.
So which means you need to be building more proactive environments and ecosystem which can actually identify those AI-enabled threats that can come in. So this is all what you can do. And again, information sharing is something which is very, very crucial. And it's very happy to see that the collaboration that is happening between the countries, between the states, is going really well.
Fantastic. I think you've touched upon some very important points there, which kind of be our segue to future podcasts. I don't want to kind of go too deep into it, because then we would kind of diversify from what our intention or objective today is. But very, very important points you made there. I can actually reflect to your points that you made, especially around threat intelligence and how the wider community globally is looking at
Exactly.
threat actors and the threat vectors, attack vectors that organizations are facing. I think there's been an increased push. This is just sharing some of my experience in this
Sure.
space.
Sure.
Working with clients globally, this is something that we see quite often. There is a, I think, deliberate push by governments globally to work with some of the critical industries within their countries. Be it UAE, be it any other country in the Middle East. I'm just calling out country names, but not in any particular order. Be it Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or Bahrain, or any of these countries. The government is definitely pushing quite hard, to work with the private sector. Be it different verticals, like you rightly mentioned, banking and financial services, or utility companies, or any of these verticals, to start collaborating and sharing this threat intelligence information. And it's also happening across borders, which means, for example, we can say US has its entity that is CISA, CISA, and they are mainly focused on protecting critical industries, in not only in their country but also around the world. They do share quite a lot of intelligence information across the world, which multiple countries actually pick up. and then proactively try to manage the threats. And I think you've made some fantastic points there. I think, especially something around AI, it's a whole world in itself, the topic. I think we'll keep that for the next podcast. We will
Sure.
will not go too deep into it, but very, very.
I think the one line statement there, DJ, is all about being proactive and being more collaborative.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can do this, I think we will be in a much better space in terms of fighting against these, threat actors or, these kind of situations.
Absolutely, absolutely, and globally, we do face, APTs, the advanced persistent threats. Industries face this often. It's not about closing our eyes to it, but being, like you rightly said, proactive about it, and knowing that these exist is the first step to actually starting to address this.
Correct.
And from there on, we keep our mind open as in the leadership space, and then we start working towards how to put controls around it. How do we come together as a community, the tech community? How do we come together, and how do we actually collaborate, join hands? And many of the events that happen here in the Middle East, for example, right now, GITEX that is happening right now in UAE, in Dubai, is also in a way paving way, or it's a segue to the industry leadership to come together with key topics that are challenges today and challenges for the future. And talking about cybersecurity, events like GITEX or GISEC play a key role. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, when we say collaboration, it's all about, building that forums and building that environment where people can come together and share information and knowledge. GITEX, has been in this country, and UAE has been driving this for so many years now. It's been more than a decade or 2 decades, I think. So what happens with GITEX or GISEC or any of these large forums where people get an opportunity to come together and understand, the different opportunities and the options that are available. Because as we talked rightly, in terms of the vectors are changing, the dynamics are changing. Similarly, the products and the solutions and the platforms also needs a lot of overhaul, a lot of change. And a lot of startups and a lot of companies are coming up with brilliant solutions, but it takes time for them to get into the market, and that's where the importance of these kind of forums. You go there, you are able to kind of understand, you connect with leaders, you are able to understand more in terms of what these solutions can provide you, make it more comprehensive, bring that ideas and innovations into your ecosystem, maybe do a POC or a POV which can actually help you maybe scale fast, into a much bigger environment and with a much lesser cost. So that's the advantage of all this environment.
Absolutely. I think very, very, very important points you made there, especially the challenges that the region is facing because of the geopolitical challenges. Thanks, Jay. I think the last question that I asked you kind of segues into my next question, especially around cross-industry collaboration and the diversity in the cyber defense space. How important do you think is cross-industry collaboration, especially when it comes to strengthening cybersecurity strategies by organizations or by industry itself, or even by at a country level itself? How important is this collaboration?
Amazing. That's a great question, DJ. I think cross-industry collaboration is absolutely critical. Why? Because cybersecurity doesn't stop by boundaries. And we know that, all the threat actors and the threat vectors, what we see, it cuts across all different industries. It cuts across different countries, regions. And we have seen the similar kind of incidents that's happening in different industries and in different countries and at the same time. So that's where the importance of cross-industry collaboration comes into the picture. And if you look at many of these, XDRs, MDRs, and these platform providers, what they do is the same. It's all about being more collaborative. They try to build that intelligence systems, and we can see that, it's not very, very publicly done, but at the same time, the intelligence has been shared between these platforms just to ensure that, because they are all fighting for a common cause. End of the day, we are all fighting against the common enemies. So that's where the cross industry collaboration, or any collaboration for that matter, becomes absolutely critical. And when it comes to the diversity, it is another piece which is equally important, because when you talk about different industries, you will also see the diversity that is there within each of these industries. You will see certain industries which is more prominent for male and male leadership. The other ones may be more prominent towards a female leadership. But end of the day, it's not about the gender. It's all about the diversity, what we can bring on in terms of gender, as well as in terms of industries, as well as in terms of the experience. Because we cannot say that these days a person who is sitting at the helm of affairs for 25 years knows everything, because unlearning is the most difficult process. And the kids these days who are coming in knows much more, because they have been going through a lot of simulated environments. They might have seen a lot more. So the way which they can pivot and bring changes into the technology and the ecosystem is fantastic. So that's where the importance is, to have more diversity, have different levels of people, different capability levels as well,
Yes.
within your teams, within your organization, and make sure that you also hire from different industries. So which means you are building a capability which is very, very collaborative in nature and very, very diverse in nature.
Superb. I think that's a very important point, because especially the point that you made around having spent decades in the industry does not equal to know all and be all in the
Correct.
industry. It's more about the current generation, or the people who are passing out of the universities nowadays are more dynamic in their learning capabilities, and they are more exposed to what we call as the latest technologies.
Exactly.
And that is something that is very much needed in the cybersecurity space, because we are no longer using technologies that we used decades ago. Even if you take 5 years ago, 10 years ago, leave alone 30 years, right? It's the technology is changing quite fast. So at the same time, we need thinkers and we need doers, and that way we are able to cover the broad spectrum. We cannot have just the thinkers. At least that's my thinking. We cannot have just the thinkers at the strategic level. We need the doers on the ground who understand the strategy and are able to actually implement the strategy. So for that purpose, diversity comes in all forms, and that I think is so crucial. I resonate to what you said.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. I've got another interesting question for you. I think you're going to love this as tech leadership, because when we talk of cybersecurity, there's another word that comes behind it, which is the investment into cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity is not a magic term by itself, where we utter the magic word cybersecurity and poof, we have everything sorted. The biggest thing around behind cybersecurity, which leadership around the world faces, is budgeting and the investment behind cybersecurity. Because unlike office furniture, where we buy once and we use it for 5 years, 10 years, cybersecurity tech, or the tools behind cybersecurity, or the capabilities that go behind cybersecurity, they need consistent and constant investment. And that brings to my question, which is how do you make, as tech leadership person, how do you make a compelling business case for cyber investments? And this is especially important because I know a lot of CISOs around the world, and CIOs, basically people who are given the C hat, struggle when it comes to getting those investments from finance, getting those approvals, getting those investments. Though everyone understands, the top leadership in the organization understands that cybersecurity is important, but the word behind that budget or the investment is critical. How do you make a compelling business case, and what are the key metrics and strategies to secure board approvals for those investments?
Oh, what an interesting question. I think every leader, in the tech space would have gone through this at some point in time in their career. I mean, to answer that, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get those investments because it's not something which is tangible, in nature where you can actually show. As you rightly said, it's not an asset which you buy and it's available for you to see that and feel it and, enjoy it, during its tenure there. It's something which you are building as a capability. And these things always comes with a lot of ambiguity. And that's where the conversation needs to be directly with the board. And I can only tell you that if you have a direct access to the board, and fortunately, in this part of the world and across the globe, if you really look at it, the COVID has been a game changer. Post COVID, every tech leader has got now at least some level of access or a good level of access into the decision making and directly with the board. So, which means you need to build a compelling case study which should actually directly correlate with certain matrices that can affect if something goes wrong. It can be financial losses.
Yep.
It can be anything that affects the organizational data. It can also be something which is not being preached very well, but it's about the brand reputation. The brand reputation, you cannot put a dollar value to it. And that's the most important and the crucial aspect that can come into the picture. We have seen cases where a brand gets eroded completely by having these situations. And so, which means, you need to build that case study in such a manner that the board is able to understand or the management is able to understand what you're talking about. Talk in their language in a very subtle manner. You need to communicate these matrices and make them aware instead of talking more about ROI, investments, budget, which are the traditional terms. ROI will be there, but when you actually put that into a case study, which is matching and mapping with these matrices, which I just spoke about. So these are things which are super critical if you want to kind of get into, seeking approvals. One of the other area which is also equally important is making sure that you understand what kind of capabilities are you planning to build. Because end of the day, in an organization, you can build a lot of stuff, and we talked about being proactive. Being proactive means you can subscribe to anything and everything that is available within the market. It's not about that. It's all about building an ecosystem that's resilient. These days, it's more about cyber resilience rather than, we talk about something which we can be making it foolproof. It's not possible. So I personally believe that any ecosystem which we are having or any organization should actually focus towards building a cyber resilient architecture. And if you have that, it's all about the previous conversation what we had. When can that happen? If that happens, how fast we can come back. So that's it all about. The sooner you can get into that architecture, the sooner you can actually create that compelling case study, which actually talks about the architecture, what you are trying to build. I think you are in the right path.
Great points there made, especially with regard to a business case investment. How should tech leadership, CIOs, CISOs be looking at how to convince the board? I just have probably one point to add. Given we work in similar field and look at the challenges similar in a similar fashion, I think the other thing when the metrics, then when we present to the board, is I've seen what works is if there is going to be any direct client impact by not having certain cybersecurity capabilities built in the organization, by not having proper resilience built into the organization, a client view of the of a possible cyber attack or a possible threat actor exposing the organization, I think bringing in the client factor works like a charm, because the most important thing for any organization which is primarily into service industry, be it banking or be it utilities, any of the companies for that matter, is clients or customers. They are the most important part for the organization. And if we can actually tie metrics with that aspect as well, it adds another layer of confidence to speak to the board.
I think, 100% agree to this particular point. It's all about the compliance aspect, bringing in that compliance aspect and making sure that you're addressing the compliance and the regulatory aspects.
Yes.
Because as we just spoke, the financial losses, the brand reputation, and the data losses and all that stuff is there. But at the same time, what if it is actually related directly or linked directly with a regulatory or a compliance aspect? That is non-negotiable for any industry for that matter. So I totally agree with that.
Yep.
And one more thing, DJ, I mean, if you really look at that point, like, I take this quote from Warren Buffett. The risk is all about not knowing everything. It's not about not knowing where you're heading. It's all about that. You don't know where you're heading is one of the biggest risks. So if you're able to kind of build that kind of an awareness and make sure that the case study is completed with a proper resilient architecture which you plan to build, I think you are in the right path.
Fantastic. I think that's so important, and the last point that you made is so critical. And I think that kind of summarizes how to approach the whole question of building a business case for increased cybersecurity investments within an organization. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
So one important question which I think is very crucial for organizations is around the human factor or the human element when it comes to cybersecurity, because it's not always tech. It is not always cybersecurity. Answers for cybersecurity challenges does not always lie with tech. Tech is definitely a factor which aids and which helps or which assists in managing threats and addressing cyber risks. But tech is not the 100% answer. So my question probably to you is, if you want to talk about the human element in cybersecurity and how do people represent both a risk and crucial line of defense in an organization, I think that is something which our viewers would be very keen to hear from you.
Great. This is my favorite. I think the human element or the human beings are the weakest link in the entire cybersecurity chain, if you may ask. So the point what I wanted to make here is you start building awareness, and this is fundamental for any organization, irrespective of industry, irrespective of what you are into. So security for me is, it starts with awareness and ends with resilience. And this is something which we can actually talk as a separate discussion itself. But because this is so critical and so underrated in most of these organizations, most of the industries, because they actually invest a lot in terms of building architecture, making the environment more resilient, making sure that we are very, very proactive. We have all sort of, technologies and, solutions that are available. But we miss on this, where a human being who is not aware will actually click on a phishing email, or who doesn't have a multi-factor authentication, or who use a corporate password in their personal profiles, so on and so forth. We all know that. It's been something which has been very common. And irrespective of the hierarchy within the organization, this is something which is very prevalent. And this is something which is again more funny when it comes to the tech leadership. We have seen that happening with the lowest level of the employee in the organization up to the highest level of the senior managers or the CCOs within the organization. It's not the problem. It's all about that awareness was missing. And it's a human tendency, to immediately jump and react onto something. And that's what all these threat vectors have been created. They are created in such a manner where you get very compelling situation. You're forced to click on that. and these clickbaits actually can lead into a massive disaster, within the organizations. So it all starts with awareness, and as I said, it ends with resilience.
Fantastic. I think that's a very important point. Starts with awareness and ends with resilience, because it's a never-ending story, right? When it comes to humans and cybersecurity challenges, it's a never-ending story, because the bad actors, what we would call it as, in quotes, if I would use the word bad actors, they're always trying to exploit the human factor rather than the technical weakness. Yes, we do come across zero-day threats and the technology side of weakness or the vulnerabilities. But while they may be many, the human factor adds to that issue. So I think that becomes very critical. Having that human factor, addressing that awareness, and then eventually moving to resilience. As you rightly said, is becomes so crucial, so important.
I think you touched upon another very important thing, which is about the bad actors. We call them bad actors,
Yeah.
the threat actors or bad actors, but for them, it's all about winning once. And for us, we have to win every time. And
Absolutely.
that's something which is, again, very, very important in this whole game. That's why I said making sure that the first line of defense is your employees. Build that awareness, invest in that. There are plenty of solutions that are available to do that simulations and build that within your organization. This is something which is very, very critical. It will actually help you to create that first line of defense within your organization in a fantastic manner.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a great point you made there, especially with that. I think so. So today we have kind of in this podcast, what we have done is we have had an attempt, and we have been, I believe, successful in kind of touching upon very crucial areas of cybersecurity as part of our first Cyber Dunes podcast. And obviously, with your vast experience in the tech leadership space, you've been very kind enough to actually share your knowledge and your experience in this space. So, I would just like to summarize for our viewers what we have touched upon today. So, we went through a couple of themes today as part of the podcast. So we went ahead from looking at what is the current state of cybersecurity in the Middle East, all the way to what are the evolving how's the evolving role of CIOs or the tech leadership in the cybersecurity space, and what are the geopolitical impacts of on cybersecurity, both regional and global. How the geopolitical situations impacts cybersecurity. Then we touched upon cross-industry collaboration, which actually where we spoke about how important it is around sharing threat intelligence, working both with government and non-government, that is private sector organizations, coming together and collaborating, sharing threat intelligence, and collectively fighting for the greater good, in order to protect the data and organizations likewise. Then very important question, we switched on to how to build a business case and what are the key KPIs that we need to think about when we are building a business case and when we are communicating with the board, when we talk about cybersecurity investments and how the budgets, those conversations, the tricky conversations, which kind of gets probably a bit murky if it is not handled properly.
Correct.
And then finally, the most important thing, we touched upon human factor, where you were very helpful in kind of sharing your experience right from awareness all the way to resilience, how to work through that whole value chain of cybersecurity. So all in all, it's been a very interesting, I should say, or very captivating conversation with you, Jay. And we at ICD InfoSec, we thank you wholeheartedly for actually making your time to actually come down and help us understand the nitty-gritties of how tech leadership views cybersecurity. But before I let you go, I do have one question for you. The final question, I promise. What is your top advice for tech leadership or CIOs who are navigating today's cybersecurity challenges?
I think any tech leader, irrespective of the region and the country, I think when it comes to cybersecurity, there are three major areas which I would suggest that they should focus on. The first one is making sure that you elevate the cybersecurity as a strategic imperative within your organization, which means, again, as we spoke a while back, you try to integrate that into everything what you do. You ingrain that into your day-to-day operations so that it doesn't become a tick in the box rather than it becomes a strategic imperative. Point number two, make sure that you cultivate a human firewall. Build that first line of defense. We talked about awareness. Build on that, invest in it, make sure that you are able to kind of create a first line of defense within your organization who can actually take a lot of hits then and there. And the last one, we talked in depth about the collaboration and the need of that. Join forces. We are not alone. In this war, we are not alone. And no war in the world is fought alone. So it's all about being more collaborative. Join forces with industry forums, with ecosystems who can actually provide informations, and make sure that you collaborate, share information so that you build a larger ecosystem which can actually help you to fight in a much better fashion against these bad actors.
Fantastic. I think so important. The last few points that you made, especially for the last question, I think that clearly summarizes what we are attempting to do today, and to bring that the first in the first podcast, to bring that cybersecurity as part of the cybersecurity awareness month, to bring that overall information about cybersecurity, overall view of cybersecurity. So, and I hope our podcast viewers have got something out of today's conversation. Yes, you can always reach out to Jay. I'm sure he wouldn't mind people reaching out to him to understand certain challenges, how he handles within his day-to-day life, be it at work or outside, while being with the CIO forum of UAE. So I'm taking the leeway and just letting our viewers know they can reach out to you. But at the same time, feel free to reach out to ICD InfoSec. You can reach out to me as well. We would be more than happy to have a chat over a coffee at any time. Thank you again, Jay, very much. And we're very grateful to Mimecast as well, to being part of this podcast, the first podcast. And we invite our listeners to join future podcasts, which will cover more diverse and also specific areas of cybersecurity, including the current trend, which is AI and machine learning in cybersecurity. Keep watching, keep your messages across to us, and always feel free to reach out to Jay or me at any time. So thank you very much again, and everyone, looking forward to seeing you in our next podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, ICD, for this wonderful opportunity.